Here's my basic Radiosity settings for my current project I'm working on. It's my bedroom, and nothing crazy modeling wise, but basically a room. Everything's closed off. It has a roof up there, a little distortion there, but yeah, it has a roof. And if I go to top view real fast, this is the outside, which would be my backyard, but I sort of made like a closed box. And if I scoot over here, here is the hallway that leads out of my room, which I didn't model besides much more than the box. So all in all, it's very simple layout. And for my radiosity settings, I have the one bulb light, which is similar to the sun, and that's in it's the backyard outside box. The reason I chose the bulb light is because the way the sun type lights work in radiosity, kind of funky. I'm sure do some searches, it'll tell you why. It's like I'd never gotten them to work correctly, so I just chose the bulb light. And what I did earlier on a couple other tests, I made a sort of a tunnel right here, which I took out, but the tunnel makes it more directional. But right now the intensity of the bulb light is at 500%, which seems like a lot, but through trial and error, it makes the shadows look deeper and darker, which I kind of want. But also this it's only one ray cast. Two rays would be for softer shadows, but for test renders right now, I'm just using one ray because it's a lot faster to render. As for my default radiosity settings, I have this is for my test renders. I usually I'm using 500,000 photons. The reason for that is because it produces my opinion, the best balance between accuracy, precision, and time of the radiosity. If I was to use something like 50,000 or 100,000, the light would be not as accurate as I want it to be. As in, like right here, it would be too blue because of the bed, even if I adjust the settings of the materials and so on. So that's how I like my settings. Photon samples 250 I figured would be a good starting point. And the way I figure out the sample area is I'll plug in. So if I go to the front view, and I right click and go plugins, wizards, and calculate surface, you can find it online. Just do a quick form search, but it calculates all the surface area of the objects based on the one light, and takes a little bit longer because of screen capture, but tells you the total area to light, and tells you, say I have 500,000 photons, and my photon sample is 250, and so it suggests a sampling area of 22,000 pretty much. I could change this. I could say, oh, I want to use some odd reason I want to use 10,000, which is way too not enough, and it'll correct that for that. Or if I go back to 500,000 and say I want 500 photon samples, recalculate, and there we go, it fixes it. I think it's not, but pretty simple stuff. A lot of it is just practice, and whoops. As you see, each frame is kind of different for different views, but yeah, this is my main working frame right now. I'd be happy to post this on the forum, but I'm gonna wait till I'm finished. Also, there's about 60 models in here, so I'll have to weed it out. As you can see, I got tons of models here, which is a bit of a pain sometimes working with, but besides that, that's pretty much my setup here. It's very simple. It's all going back here, I have the intensity at 80%, which is sort of like I found the right balance between indirect lighting, because what it's really doing is calculate the bounce light as the light comes through and bounces around, and so it gives that sort of fill, and that's the intensity of that, which is I call it the shutter speed, because the higher the intensity, it's more like you open the shutter longer on a camera. I have the 50 bounces because actually I did several tests alternating between 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, running out little tiny frames to compare the Photon Map. And I figured out 50 made the best visuals, so I set it to 50. I have no caustics in here, no need to. And final gathering. For test renders, I alternate between 50 samples, which is the lowest, to 200 samples for like an overnight render where I don't have time, where I have plenty of time. But that's good. Jittering is when you use multipass, and it renders the photon. Sometimes it creates a pattern just based off the algorithm it uses. So you increase jittering up, it'll make it random. So I believe it goes up to 10,000, which is, I don't know why you need that much, but I usually use between 100 to 500. So that's good. And pre-compute irradiance, I just like to have it on. It's better. And all said and done, you just right click and calculate radiosity once you have your settings right. And to get your photon map, first you go to your camera, go to render options, and you take multipass, drop it to 1. Then you go over to your radiosity settings in your choreography radiosity panel, and you turn off final gathering. And it's going to take probably a second to render, but here I'll just do a little corner. And there you go. You can see here that rendered quite fast. I'll do the whole room real fast. So it's going to take a minute or so. Hopefully not that much, but this is how I get my photon map. It tells you the coverage of the photons from the light coming out. They come out as circles, and ideally you want to see no spots. You want them to overlap each other. That's the ideal way to have it. So if it comes out too spotty, you need to increase the sample area. Using the Calculate Radiosity plugin, it's great because it tells you really the optimum. But you should always experiment with your settings. There's really, each scene is unique. Each scene needs its own settings. So hopefully it's almost done. Let's give it a second. Also, talk briefly about materials in a second. Okay, so here's the photon map. Here it's kind of spotty. See how you can still see the white of the wall, but everywhere else has it's all blotched up, which is nice. There's a lot of good coverage, and I still have some shadow detail, so it's not too intense. So that's good. And this is what I mean by a photon map. This is what you're really viewing. And when you set final gathering on, it does the exact same thing, but it creates the spots smaller and smaller and interpolates the light based on the coverage and the color of each spot and the intensity of that. So what I do is I change settings and I render these out. They're quite quick to render out, and I compare which one looks best. And once I found a couple of them I like, I set final gathering on to like a low amount and do the same thing, which takes a little longer. I compare which ones are better, and I narrow it down to a couple of them. And I do a larger render and I compare the last couple of them. Whichever one I like, I'll choose that one, and that's what I'm sticking with. So to talk briefly about materials in a scene, you have to be very careful with some settings in the material. So if I go to, here's the bed material I use, just sort of a blue fractal sum combiner, and the attributes. With radiosity, specularity is different. I'm using extremely low values right now, like 10, 1, and 1. The reason for that is because if you use, say, like, normally I'd say like 50% size for specularity and like 25 for the size, or I mean the intensity, it will give you weird rendering artifacts. There's a certain way to do it correctly. I haven't really mastered that yet, but for the most part, I just take it like about a tenth of the, like a percent, 1% of the actual value when I do radiosity. That affects it. Also, I don't really have it set too much, but the radiance. Whoops. Turn it back. Radiance is, if anyone's familiar with the term reflectance, it's basically that. It's basically how reflective the surface is of light. A bright white sheet of paper would have like a 90% value because it reflects a lot of light because it's a bright white sheet, as in a deep black of paint or something like that would have a really low value of like 10 or 20. And the reason I had the bed so low is because it was creating too much blue light in this wall, so I toned that down a bit. Also, on the material for the wall itself, it was a little too bright in the room, so I turned that down. Let's see, I don't remember I set it, but yeah, I set the radiance down. It was at 100%, but I knocked it down because it was too bright. So that's some simple radiosity stuff. I want to do a full set of tutorials on different types of indoor, outdoor, and caustic radiosity. Do a quick video on that, but I hope this helps. So